Delatane paused and held up a hand. The party of fur trappers slowed their pace and stopped, heaving and puffing the close forest air, humid and hot at this time of year. Delatane turned his head this way and that, his broad brow creased with a frown, his slightly burgundy nose crinkling as he sniffed the air. He turned and looked down at the lead trapper, uttering only 3 words. "Do not move." The trapper's eyes widened as a gust of cold wind came out of nowhere. The green leaves and dappled light of summer turned to reds and yellows, with a sunset glow shining everywhere in the sky. Wet smells of root and earth, sweat and fresh-cut skins, mixed with strange floral fragrance, sweet air and something cold. The air began to moan through the trees and twist into small eddies that lifted leaves and spun them around this way and that. It keened and whistled. Delatane went down to one knee. Still eye level with the trappers, the furbolg unshouldered his pack and opened it. Taking out a bag of salt, he poured it around himself in a rough circle and placed 2 iron nails between his slightly blue lips. Eyes closed in concentration as he cast a spell of sanctuary. The trappers heard a crash and a thump, a creaking of wood above the noise of the wind, as a looming shadow grew out of the forest, and then, with a slow and menacing deliberate stride, like some great predatory bird, an impossibly large and tall bird leg stomped down not 20 feet from where they stood. The trappers followed the sight of the leg up, past a knobbly knee scaled and covered in ochre leather hide, to a clump of dark and shredded feathers, each as long as a man's arm, and then, somehow, connected to a small wooden cabin, with no windows or doors, clad in a thatched roof. It strode past them, with steps 30 feet apart. The cabin seemed to cast 2 shadows. If it did have windows, the trappers feared whatever would stare back out at them. As it passed, the wind followed, and on the wind a gale of flying leaves, fluttering and twisting, sweeping and dancing. These were no leaves. They moved like them and almost looked like them, but the sound of tiny voices, laughter, shrieks and yells, and legs and arms made no mistaking them. These were fairies. So many fairies in one place. The trappers had never seen the like in this or any forest glade. As shadows and wind and fairy storm passed, the sun set low, also eased back into the warm summer sun through a green canopy, and still the furbolg waited. The trappers dared not to move, but now, breathing hard, having not realized that they had been holding their breath. The furbolg stirred at last, rising slowly up, looking with keen eyes and sharp senses, a hand still raised and facing back at the trappers, gesturing them to remain still. Long minutes passed. Delatane turned to face them at last. Stepping out of his crude circle, he walked past the line of trappers and sadly bent down to pick up a backpack off the ground, a dark wet stain of scarlet dripping from it. The trappers took a moment to understand and then recoiled in horror. "Where is Beltram? I heard nothing. He was right behind me." The furbolg sighed and picked up the bundles of fur skins, looking from them to the others. "He is gone. She has taken him." "Who has, damn it? What witchcraft is this?" "Witch?" The furbolg shook his head, braided hair tousled from the wind in the wilds. "That was no witch of this world. That was Baba Yaga, and Beltram is gone." In this peculiar nature of such things that, even years later, none of the trappers felt particularly lucky to have survived that day. Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick channel. Today we shall talk about one of the most famous and fearsome beings of the magical world of Dungeons & Dragons, inspired directly from the traditional Slavic folklore. First written account of this that has survived in print is dated from 1755, but the legend was already old by then. Baba Yaga is a fairly ambiguous supernatural being of the Fey world, but I can tell you what is known, even if at times it seems completely contradictory. That's just the nature of these things. She takes the form of a hideous old crone, a toad-like creature with gnarled arms like tree trunks clutching a massive pestle, and a spindly silver birch broom in dark brown claws. Protruding from the top of a wooden mortar, the old crone squats, her thin lips as downcast as her dark eyes. Wild strings of mangy hair fly out behind her as she moves, riding on gusts of an unnatural wind. Around her, toadstools rise up, red and plump in contrast to her leathery, dry skin. She tilts the mortar pot forward and skitters across the forest floor as she hurries about on her dark business. When she does clamber out of it, she can be seen to have gnarled, bony legs, a large, deformed nose, and long iron teeth. Baba Yaga is able to divine the future at some cost to herself, it seems. She appears to age even more as she uses this power. Whenever she appears on the scene, the wild wind begins to blow and the trees around creak and groan and leaves swirl through the air. Shrieking and wailing, a host of spirits often accompany on her way, along with creatures of a dark and mischievous nature. As she skims across the forest floor, she uses a broom made of silver birchwood to sweep away all traces of her passage, if she ever needs to fly from one place to another, she hops on that same broom and soars across the sky. She will always ask those who come for her help, "Are you here of your own free will, or by compulsion, my good youth?" And you had best answer correctly. She either aids young visitors who stumble upon her hut in their journeys, or she cuts things short by attempting to eat them. And if encountered within her hut, she will probably be sleeping, stretched out above her enormous cooking oven in the middle of the shack, reaching from one side of the other, snoring through that huge and repulsive nose. Her limbs will be stretched out further than they should be as she perches across that oven. Now, here is the thing you may not know. Baba Yaga is not just one entity, she is 3 sisters. Older, middle, and younger sister. Each of them has a hut with chicken legs. Each has the same physical qualities and unsavory appetites, magical powers, and fearsome reputation. In the folklore, generally you don't find the hut on the move that much. It will be found standing in a clearing with a fence made of human bones, topped with human skulls that shine baleful light out of empty eye sockets. The hut will have no visible windows and doors. It will be slowly turning about in a circle on those great chicken legs, seemingly always turning the back of the shack towards whoever is looking at it. Only Baba Yaga can command the hut to turn its doorway to her by uttering the phrase, "Turn your back to the forest, your front to me." What makes Baba Yaga more interesting than the average hag, I suppose you could say, is that she has a number of powerful servants and a strangely ethical way of determining who she's going to murder and eat. To boil down the many stories, if a child or youth is sent to her against their will by wicked people who seek to rid themselves of the youth in the classic sort of Hansel and Gretel story, Baba Yaga will, instead of immediately killing and eating the youth, send them on some weird and extremely difficult task. One such was to separate wheat chaff from rice grains. If they fail, the hag will eat them. If they succeed, Baba Yaga will actually help them. It seems that those of pure heart, those protected by the power of love and virtue, are protected from the foul appetite of Baba Yaga, or perhaps she is free of her terrible cravings in their presence, such that she shifts from the hungry evil of the nature of winter, tooth and claw, to a more nurturing and wise springtime aspect, being able to help them instead of harm them. Most often this involves giving the youth a strange magical item that will aid them in their navigation to get them safely out of the forest, and will bring terrible ruin on whoever sent the youth to their doom in the first place. The interesting thing about this sort of encounter from a role-playing perspective is that Baba Yaga, as a legendary fey being, seems to pull the Feywild into the material world around her. She warps reality as though it was some sort of dream, and her servants and followers are similarly weird and twisted, having become something timeless as a fable, almost nonsensical. An example is the 3 riders who serve her. One is white, one is red, the other is black, and Baba Yaga calls them my bright dawn, my red sun, and my dark midnight. Who or what these beings are, or once were, is something of a mystery. Also among her other servants are 3 bodiless and somewhat menacing pairs of hands, like the Thing from the Addams Family show, which appear out of thin air to do her bidding. She calls them my soul friends, or friends of my bosom, and will say no more about them. No doubt she has many more weird and inexplicable characters in her retinue that a Dungeon Master can pepper into the scenario, helping or hindering in some small ways, never really explained, always odd and kind of disturbing. Perhaps a sprite with chicken foot bones instead of wings, or a toad covered in human-sized eyes, or a horn that when blown will utter not a sound but cause all who hear it to wither with age before it crumbles to dust, or a twisting bush with poisonous thorns that grows blue roses, which Baba Yaga makes into a potion that will restore some of her lost youth and vigour. There may be animated objects in her hut, kitchen utensils, books of strange spells, extremely rare herbs and ingredients that may be the object of some adventurer's quest. Baba Yaga has knowledge of all magical charms and potions, knows the names of demons and keys to portals, knows the days and seasons, secret ways and roads of the green path and the infinite stairway. She is certainly not going to just give the information away to anyone who comes asking. In fact, she's a deadly threat to many who do. There are other fey powers and immortal beings trapped within this roaming dream that have their own strange rules and behaviours, such as a galloping, naked, long-limbed sorcerer who calls forth wicked spirits of winter and ruin, craving blood to soak the ground, a shapeshifter, a trickster, and a malevolent predator who will steal away beauty from the immortal world. There are many evil beings who seem to orbit around the existence of the Baba Yagas. And yes, while all of these can be represented by hags and nightmares, sprites, animated objects, boggles, Fomorians, darklings, quicklings, grigs, banderhobs, and ghosts, blights, crawling claws, and shambling mounds, it is the dream or the myth-like quality of it all that makes this a real encounter with Baba Yaga. And such is the way when encountering any lords of the Feywild. They don't just move through the land of fairy, they are the source of it. They mould it and define it. The rules of these domains, often unique and follow their own logic, contradictory and both helpful and harmful, beneficial and deadly, familiar enough to those of the Feywild and those who are native to the Fey realms, and totally maddening alien landscapes to those with no familiarity with the rules of the Feylands. These are dreamscapes. There are many Fey creatures like this. Baba Yaga is famous, but she and her sisters are just a few of countless others, most of whom are completely unknown to the beings of the mortal world, or perhaps just exist as fables and riddles, spooky bedtime stories to scare kids into behaving. But beyond the veil, in the deep green or dark forest, beyond the soft sunset glimmer of the fabled land, beyond the endless spring and innocent wonder of unbounded nature, there is darkness, there is hunger, there is tooth and claw, the frozen heart of winter, the flip side of nature. The Feywild is not a safe place. It's not a normal place. It has its own rules, and they are strange ones that must be learned, preferably before one is subjected to them. Just a reminder, if you've not subscribed already, feel free to do so. Be sure to hit that notification bell as I upload from the other side of the world sometime in your future. For access to all these scripts, 1 week advance access to these videos, consider becoming a patron of the channel on Patreon for a minimum of just $1 per month. Join the community on our Discord server, come say hi. Also, if you want to pick up a video game at a significant daily discount and help me out in the process, there's a new video game every day, so check out the daily deal on Chrono down below. Link below in the video description, along with a meager modest offering of some merch for the channel to help support me. As always, thanks for listening. I'll be back with more for you very soon. Some more Fey stuff this week, and possibly some Shark Week stuff as well. Thanks for listening, everyone.